Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 5 and compare it against the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra and see which specific phone is the better one for you. Now, I've always been kind of a proponent into recommending people to buy the Ultra phone of that year rather than any of the flips or the folds of that year. And the main reason for that is because the Ultra phone of that year, I think, is just way better for each individual person. It's just way more comfortable to use as of now for the average person, but also it's usually cheaper at the end of the year by the time the folds come out. So if you're comparing it like a used S23 Ultra to a brand new Z Fold 5, a used one is definitely going to be giving you and saving you so much more money. And I generally do think it's the better phone. I mean, you're getting an S Pen built in, a way better camera, and usually just a better feeling phone that's just kind of a little bit more durable than the Fold phones in my opinion. Now, if you want to pick up either one of these devices, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both these phones, the S23 Ultra has that 6.8-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It's a 1440p panel, and it's an amazing display. It's 120Hz. It's a curved glass panel as well. And from everything that I've seen from Samsung, these are some of the best panels that they make. They look beautiful. I like them a lot. There's not a lot to hate on it, and I think, once again, like I said before, Samsung has just killed it, and they are still killing it with these panels. On the front of the Z Fold 5 though, it's kind of complicated. You have two main displays. So you have the cover display, which is like a smaller 6.2-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It's about the same size as something like a Galaxy S23, kind of roughly. It's measured a little bit different, so keep that in mind. It's 120Hz, but that main display is the one where it's like unfolded, and that thing has a 7.6-inch foldable dynamic AMOLED display. It's 120Hz, and it's a beautiful panel for sure. It's a very high resolution, higher than the S23 Ultra, and I do think for the most part, Samsung again did a really good job on that display. I don't think it's better than the S23 Ultras. I do think the Ultras panel is better than the Folds, but still I like the Fold. I think it looks great. And again, there's not a lot to hate on it. But I do think with something like the S23 Ultra, that is probably, in my opinion, maybe the better display for sure. I mean, it's like clearly the better one in my opinion. But the Z Fold 5 has more of a novelty factor just because it is kind of like that foldable phone. I think that is kind of like an interesting dynamic to it. Both of them have USB-C ports at the bottom, and both of them have like these frosted glass backs, which I think do look pretty good. I do think if you're going to be getting a phone, getting a device that has this type of back is probably more premium than getting like a standard glass back. So that is kind of an advantage that you're getting from these two devices from that perspective as well. Now, you're getting IP certification on both, but I do think the IP certification on the S23 Ultra might be a little bit better, but it's totally up to you. You're getting wireless charging, reverse wireless charging. They both have S Pen support, but the S Pen is built inside of the S23 Ultra, where the Z Fold 5 is like separate, so kind of keep that in mind as well. But in terms of the outside, that genuinely kind of covers it up. Both of them are very good. I like both of them a lot, but I do think the S23 Ultra is probably the better one when it kind of comes down to it. So from that perspective, that kind of covers it up there. From the camera perspective, like I mentioned, you are definitely getting a way better camera on the S23 Ultra than the Z Fold 5. And this is something that I talk about every single year when the Folds come out. I think if Samsung put the same Ultra camera inside of the Fold camera, then it'd be a different story. But that is not the case. The S23 Ultra's camera is just way better than the Folds. You're getting a triple camera setup wide telephoto ultra-wide camera on the Fold 5. The S23 Ultra, 200 megapixel wide, 10 megapixel periscope telephoto, 10 megapixel telephoto, then a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera. You're getting an additional sensor, and I do think it is a bigger difference for sure. You're getting 8K at 30 on the back, and you are getting 4K at 60 on the front, which is really nice. But from every single thing that I've tested, from every single thing that I've ever used from both these phones, the S23 Ultra's camera is just better, but also the Ultra cameras are probably the best cameras on any phone of that year. I haven't really seen Apple. I mean, Apple does really good, all these other phone manufacturers do really good too, but I just think Samsung stands on their own with their Ultras, and that has just been one of the most beautiful things I've seen time and time again from them. So from my perspective, the Galaxy S23 Ultra definitely has a better camera here for a fact. Now, in terms of software and longevity, this one is pretty easy. Both of them are going to be getting basically the same lasting software on both. So with the S23 Ultra, although it did come out earlier this year, it's still going to be lasting basically the same amount of time as the Z Fold 5. If we take a look at historically from other Samsung phones Samsung's made, typically their Folds will last as long as their Ultras of that year, and this is exactly what's going on here. So you're going to be getting essentially the same software longevity. The only slight thing that could be in the favor, I think, for the Ultra is that sometimes when Samsung does push out like a One UI update, they usually give it to like their S23s or S series of those phones first, and then they give it to the Folds a little bit later. It could change, some things like that could change all the time, but that has been one thing I've seen a little bit. So just keep that in mind. It's not a deal breaker or end of the world or anything, but that is just one thing to kind of keep in mind there too. Now, performance-wise, this is kind of another similarity, but also a little bit of a difference. So they are very similar if you can spec them out kind of the same. So base-wise, they already come out with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 chipset, a very fast chipset. I mean, that's probably one of the fastest chipsets you could buy just in general on any mobile device, but especially on a phone, it is a very good chipset. They both have, the RAM models that can be spec'd out the same, so you can go up to 12 gigabytes of RAM on both, but the difference between them is that the Fold 5 already comes with 12 gigabytes of RAM. The S23 Ultra starts at 8 gigs of RAM, which really isn't that big of a difference. It's definitely more RAM you're getting on the Fold 5, but if that is something that bothers you, you could probably get a 12 gigabyte of RAM S23 Ultra for still cheaper in the used market than a brand new Z Fold 5. In fact, you could probably get a used S23 Ultra 12 gigabyte model for less than the Fold 5 anyway. So that's probably just one other thing to keep in mind, I think. In terms of performance though, both phones are probably some of the best performing phones this year. Like I said, I think Samsung knocks it out of the park with these types of devices, and these are no exceptions. I think every time I use any sort of device like this, I think Samsung just does such a great job. And I love Samsung. I love all their phones they make, even the Fold. But I do think from the performance side, I think they kill it. I think they knock it out of the park. But I do think the S23 Ultra is the more comfortable one if you're trying to play games or use applications for a long period of time. The S23 Ultra might be the better way to go, even more so than like the Fold 5 in this specific situation. On top of that, when you are getting a device like these two, they have a little bit of a different battery capacity as well. The S23 Ultra has a 5,000 mAh battery. The Fold 5 has a 4,400 mAh battery. You're also getting faster charging on the S23 Ultra, which is just another cherry on top. So from my perspective alone, I do think you are getting overall a better performing device on the S23 Ultra. And I do think the Ultra is the better phone a majority of the time than the Fold 5. From everything that I've seen, from everything that I've tested, I do think that the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 5 is a good phone. I like it. It's definitely an interesting phone. But I do think the Ultra phone of that year, like I mentioned, is the better one that I would recommend a majority of people to buy. There isn't really anything in my head that makes sense for me to go and recommend people to buy the Fold 5 for the average person. If you like it, then that's awesome and I love that for you. But like I said, for the average person, you are much better off buying something even like a base model Galaxy S23 or S23 Plus, rather than buying something like the Fold 5, because I just don't know if the average person is comfortable using a Fold phone yet, although I would be 100% comfortable and it's a feature and it's really cool. I think the S23 Ultra might be the better way to go for a majority of people. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that means so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.